You can't fault us for variety this week, Hannah. We're going to start on Disney Plus with a new music documentary that will be available on Friday, the 24th of May. It's called The Beach Boys, and here's a clip.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beach Boys!
The Beach Boys just represented some sort of fantasy.
They were participating in the creation of a California dream.
Man, they made me want to go to where they had cars and girls in bikinis and sun.
Well, this is right up my street, as you can imagine, Hannah. I'm a huge Beach Boys fan. Of course, the band was formed in the early 1960s by the Wilson brothers, Brian, Carl and Dennis, along with their cousin Mike Love, who was the lead singer, and their friend Al Jardine. But as you will see from this feature-length documentary, the lineup did change quite a bit. At one point it included Glenn Campbell, partly because Brian, who was sort of the production genius in the band, he didn't like touring, so they used to draft people to go into the touring version of the band. So yeah, it's a look back over the history of the band. I mean, they've done so much, but it touches on, for instance, the relationship with the dad, who was not a particularly nice piece of work, and you get an insight into how he was a very strict parent and how that might have impacted on the boys. And he did become their manager, but there was a falling out, and most shockingly, he sold the rights to the songs, depriving future generations of millions of pounds in royalties. So yes, we see a bit of that. We get a bit of an insight into the kind of rivalry with the Beatles when the Beatles were up and coming, and that the Beach Boys were like, oh, who's this new British band that kind of knocking us off our perch, that kind of culminated in their masterpiece Pet Sounds and the orchestration on that. They kind of went from singing about surf, sun, cars and girls to much more introspective songs and lyrics with this amazing Brian Wilson production, and he was quite influenced by Phil Spector, the legendary producer. So yeah, music fans are going to absolutely love it. They don't really go into, there were quite a lot of fallouts, particularly to do with the sale of the rights and royalties and so on, and there were some lawsuits. So unsurprisingly, they don't go into that. They do touch on the fact that they did collaborate with Charles Manson, who kind of became friendly with the rebellious brother Dennis. But yeah, it's fascinating, and there are a lot of talking heads who are sort of today's stars, such as Janelle Monáe or Nile Rodgers, people like that, talking about the influence of the Beach Boys and how much they love them. I'm sure you enjoyed this too, Hannah.
Yeah, we love stuff like this, don't we? I love music documentaries, and you know, the Beach Boys music, you just know it, whether it's your era or not. And I think in many ways, documentaries like this, as we always say, you learn so much from, whether it's from the talking heads or, you know, in some cases, some instances, the people in the band that are sort of part of it. And I think that the sad part of this, like you said, is the kind of fallout, but it's not unusual, is it? It's just really regular that this seems to happen. You know, these groups are put together, you know, the dad's a part, it then becomes the manager, then there's a big fallout, they're quite pushy. I mean, perhaps that's what's required to get this level of success and fame. I don't know, you'd like to think that it's not, but it seems to be a common theme, I think. But, you know, as I say, the music in this is, you know, is obviously good. A lot of people will know it, whether it's your era or not. And I just find these kind of things really, really fascinating, and the dynamic and what you see, and even us being in the press, what we see, kind of the external face versus the internal face, is so different, isn't it? And I find it fascinating, and I think they can just keep churning these sorts of things out, and we'll still be there watching, because it's just the road or the path to success is not an easy one, and the fallout, you know, from a mental health perspective, you know, on physically, you know, they were young, it's exhausting but incredibly interesting. So yeah, highly recommend.